We're doing it, and then we're doing one with life gifts. The two CEOs that talked about it, and they talked to people. Those wonderful kids.
That's my godson, Liam, and that's his little sister, Carter.
Cute.
Clerk, call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Devin Allen, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Figgis, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Pastor Robert White from My Freedom Fort Worth, Texas. Thank you for coming out today. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Let's pray. Gracious and wise Father, we come before you this morning to say thank you. We thank you for allowing us to see another day and have another opportunity to engage in the work that you have called us to. We thank you for this great team of people that you have assembled to lead and to govern in our county. We pray now that as we engage in the work that you've called us to, that you would grant us your wisdom and your heart to execute justice and unity and love for all of the fruitfulness in the work for human flourishing in our county. We pray now that you would bless this time and that it will be filtered and filled with your presence. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you, Reverend. Thank you, Pastor, for coming out today.
Members of the Court, we have several agenda items this morning. First, as we have done in the past, we're going to be taking certain things out of order. We'll obviously have Mr. Tanasia come up and make his presentation concerning health-related issues, but Mr. Early is here also, and we'll be bringing him up right before we go into the administrator section. Remind the Commissioners Court that tomorrow we have a PEBC meeting which will be held at the Council of Governments. It starts at 2 o'clock. There's also a Zoom component as relates to that particular item. Your Honor, I did notice we do have an audience participation form on one of the agenda items, and it is on consent, so we're going to remove item 9A5 from the consent agenda so that that person can make any comments that they wish, but we intend to take action on that particular item when we get to that particular point. Also, members of court, under purchasing, item I1, this is bid 2022-035. This is the sale of recycled paper. There's a new court communication in your red folder as it relates to that particular item. The paper was bid and sold yesterday, so we added it to the court information that we sent you earlier this morning. I believe you probably have that in your red folder. Besides those items in the briefing section, also we are going to do the training for the prevention of harassment and discrimination discussions. HR is going to be leading that discussion initially, and I think that we have provided some additional information in your red folder as it relates to that also. So we're going to remove item number 5 from the consent. Okay. Very good. All right. Thank you, Your Honor.
Why don't we move, I know we've got some folks here on item 3 on your agenda. Why don't we move that up and make that one of the first on the agenda, if we could, too, from that standpoint. Okay. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of November the 9th.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Fickus?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson? Motion passes unanimously. We have a couple of proclamations. The first is for Tarrant County Adoption Day, and we're going to do that for ratification only, and that will be delivered later this week, so I'll move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Allen?
Yes, thank you, Judge. Well, I'm honored to have 3 guests with us this morning from a recently formed, I guess 2 or 3 years ago, an organization called Black Women's Wall Street. And I came to become familiar with the organization through the Arlington Black Chamber of Commerce, and since then have just been very impressed with the work that they do to empower women, and especially women of color, to pursue their entrepreneurial dreams as well as to establish and succeed in their financial freedom. So I will read this into the record. Whereas Black Women's Wall Street Incorporated, a 501c3 nonprofit organization, was formed in 2018 by a group of women with unique and powerful backgrounds. And whereas their efforts in support of Black women in business includes a weekly radio program called The Boardroom, the annual Idea to Inception, or I2I program, and more. And whereas the I2I program focuses on empowering and equipping Black women to become small business owners, entrepreneurs, and leaders, and provides the participants with business training, financial literacy, and education needed to start and operate a business. Whereas the multi-session program is led by subject matter experts in topics including discovery and mind mapping, business plans, business credit and funding, digital marketing and branding, and tax strategies. And whereas Black Women's Wall Street held their inaugural Black and Bling Gala in October to recognize the recent I2I participants who successfully completed the program and set up their businesses. And whereas the participants recognized at the 2021 event were Jashawn Kervin, Marcita Chavette, Darnicia Calvin, Nidria Burnett, and Erica Newman. And whereas Black Women's Wall Street is focused on creating a community of women who want more and will fight to have more so they can build a legacy and create wealth for their families for generations to come. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby congratulate Black Women's Wall Street on the success of their inaugural Idea to Inception Black and Bling Gala in celebration of Black women in business, and further do commend them for their commitment to strengthening, supporting, and empowering women, especially those significantly impacted during the pandemic, but to create their own successful and self-sustaining businesses. In witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed the 16th day of November 2021. And with that, I move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Great. And then I'm going to ask 3 women from Black Women's Wall Street to join me down at the podium. We've got Jacoy James, who's the president, Latoya Barrow, who's an executive board member, and Faustina Nkwocha, who also is an executive board member.
It's kind of like we're drawing straws and you got the short straw.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure and honor for us to be here as Black Women's Wall Street, Inc. and I'm Faustina Nkwocha, co-founder and executive board member and treasurer. And on behalf of our president, Jacoy James Pugh, Latoya Barrow, our vice president and secretary, we just want to say thank you for this opportunity. Thank you so much, Commissioner Devin. It's such a pleasure and honor for us because we're really passionate about what we do, and our mission is something that is really important. Entrepreneurship is important. Talking and protecting and helping micro enterprises, particularly in this pandemic, is something that we all need to focus on, because micro enterprises are the backbone of our economy, not just small business, but really talking to people who are every day doing what they need to do. And as a nonprofit organization, we're like the boots on the ground in terms of business activism, and that's what Black Women's Wall Street represents. We're passionate about our mission because we truly want to empower Black women who are aspiring to become business owners by providing them with startup business training, financial literacy, and education so that they can impact local and global communities. And through our Idea to Inception program, we're hoping to do that and take that to another level so that we can also impact Black women around the world. Again, thank you all so much for this opportunity. It is such a pleasure and honor, and we look forward to doing more great things and being worthy of this recognition today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioners, do y'all have any announcements that you'd like to make today? I would just like to remind everybody that the auction for the United Way ends at noon this Friday. So if you've got an item you're watching, be sure and be watching that item around noon, or somebody may grab it from you.
I'm trying to get that $100,000 together to give you a haircut.
Yeah, good luck with that. I think every hair is safe in place. Okay, so court members, you have before you the consent agenda.
Moving approval of the consent agenda, except for item 5, which
Yes.
has been removed.
Second.
The motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. So we're going to move to item 3 on the administrator's report.
Good morning, Judge and Commissioners.
Morning.
So for your approval today, we have the establishment of the Tarrant County Mental Health Jail Diversion Center Advisory Committee. We do have Ms. Garnett in the audience with us today, should she have any questions. I believe you all have a copy of the charter in front of you for review, and we stand ready for your questions or approval.
I'm going to move adoption of this item so that we can fully discuss it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Okay, so go ahead, sir. Now, we've got some folks who have also asked to speak to this item today, and we'll go through some initial discussion, and then we'll give them an opportunity to come up. Or would you prefer to hear their comments before we?
Why don't we hear the audience comments?
Okay.
I know that Councilwoman Elizabeth Beck has some remarks.
Yes.
And so does the Criminal District Attorney, Sharon Wilson.
Well, the two public ones that I have are Ms. Beck as well as Thomas Tomlikasi. And so, Ms. Beck, if you would like to come forward first.
Judge,
Welcome.
good morning. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. First, I want to commend everybody here and everybody not in this room that has worked so hard to get this particular project in place. It is going to be amazing for Fort Worth, for Tarrant County, and as the council person who will have the honor and the privilege of having that center in my district, thank you for doing that. And I'm excited to work with both the county and our DA and our police department to make sure it's as effective and efficient as possible. And so that's why I'm asking today that amendment be made to the advisory committee. Currently, it states 1 City of Fort Worth representative, and I would like it to be amended to have 1 City of Fort Worth representative and 1 representative appointed by the Fort Worth Police Chief to sit on that advisory committee, as it will be located in Fort Worth, and our police department has been integral as the development of this project has come on board, we have been very innovative in how we police around mental health and homelessness in Fort Worth, and the creation of our HOPE team and our crisis intervention team. And I want to make sure that as the entity doing the heavy lift in and around that center, we have a strong voice at that table to address any concerns of our constituents or the implementation of that particular facility. I would also like to make sure that the advisory board is just that, an advisory board, that they are allowed to participate, have complete and full understanding and knowledge of the workings of that particular facility, so that we can best address any issues or any changes that need to be made, and determine what our success is and how we can move forward for Tarrant County and Fort Worth. Thank you so much.
So let me be sure that I understand. What you're suggesting is that you would like one council representative as well as one representative that would be appointed by your police chief?
Yes, Judge, one council-appointed representative. So whether that be a council person or a subject matter expert in the city, one council-appointed.
Council-appointed, not necessarily council member.
Correct.
Okay.
And we do have that currently exists in the policy itself now.
We have a city of Fort Worth representative. We don't, but I think what I hear you saying is you would like to guarantee two, one appointed by the council, one appointed by the police.
That's correct, Judge.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councilwoman Beck?
I support Councilwoman Beck's request. It seems reasonable to me that since this facility will be located in the city of Fort Worth, and that probably the majority of the persons served at the facility will be collected from the streets of the city of Fort Worth, that they not only have a council-appointed representative, but their chief of police or his designee should be included in the membership of this committee.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Lakasi.
Judge Whitley, Commissioners.
Morning.
Full disclosure, I had no idea that my city councilwoman was going to speak on the very same subject, or my county commissioner. However, I echo their suggestions, and I actually have an ask that might expand it a little bit more. I think that the city of Fort Worth is roughly half the population of the county, and it makes sense given the fact that the number of indigent citizens and folks that are in the jail, low-level offenders, are disproportionately representing the city of Fort Worth. It makes sense to me that this advisory committee reflect that similar proportion. The second point, and it's probably pretty progressive for some of you, is in addition to the experts, amongst the 2.2 million citizens of Tarrant County, there is someone, somewhere, who served time in that jail. Maybe it was 10 or 20 years ago. But I guarantee you that that person is going to give you some of the best advice and some of the best input that you're going to get when it comes to the experience and the mental exposure and the opportunity to divert a number of folks to give relief to both the sheriff and the district attorney's office. So I strongly advise that you consider somebody who spent a little bit of time in a county jail specifically.
Thanks, sir. That's all the public comments that I have with regards to that. Sharon, would you like, I indicated that you'd indicated that you'd like to speak to a little bit of that, so come forward.
So my very short request, really, I just brought additional documents for you to look at, is that so first, thank you for trusting me with working on this 2 years ago. I appreciated the opportunity. It was a county-wide effort, and we were proud to work on it. Now that we're kind of at the finish line, I'd like to make sure that it continues to be a county-wide and very open effort. So the advisory committee document that you have sets out the role and responsibility, and it says periodic evaluation of program performance, review of routine reports provided to the court. That's a concern to me because the oversight committee from the very beginning, the discussion was they would be kind of the boots on the ground, the police chiefs that are using it, the city council people, the people who are actually working with it. And they need more than just a broad overview of a report that would be something that would be given to Commissioners Court. And I realize that you all, as members of this effort, could ask for more things. My concern is that the document itself does not have those items in it. So that is the document that's before you today is tab 3. The third purple tab. Tab 4 is what we had proposed. And let me tell you, from the minute we started working on the Oversight Committee, one of the subcommittees was the documents. And Chris Taylor from our office was assigned to not only look at all the different documents for other mental health jail diversion programs, because remember, Harris County has a very successful one. We use them as a model. And so a lot of our information came from those. But our proposal for the Mental Health Oversight Committee included that the board could receive reports and request reports from the director of the facility, and could review those reports, and that they could, if you look at what we have highlighted on the last document, which was our proposal, could obtain reports from information from MHMR, the Tarrant County Administration, about policies and procedures. And also we had to highlight that the meetings would begin 30 days after the formation. Because let me suggest that if this is a brand new effort of multiple people in the community as a collaborative effort, that it would be very important for them to actually be able to start meeting now within 30 days of today's date, if today is the date that this is passed, so that their input could be received at this time. I bring this up because I think it's important that the documents actually outline the authority that the Oversight Committee has, because we're asking people who have regular jobs, regular efforts, who believed in this and have worked on this for a long time, to actually come be a part. And I think they're not a significant part or a meaningful part if they can't get information. So the first document that you have in your packet is the actually executed document that you all passed, the ILA, between Tarrant County and the Mental Health MHMR as the facility operator. And page 5 of that says that additional requests for information, MHMR must timely provide all information requested by the county administrator. And I want you to see, because if you look at the next document, it's what we proposed. On page 5 of the next document, our proposal was that MHMR timely provide all information requested by the county administrator, members of the Tarrant County Commissioners Court, members of the Oversight Committee, or their respective designees. That was removed from the ILA that you all passed. I did not stand up that day to bring that to your attention, and so I feel like I should have, because that was a month ago and I should have. But I think what I was waiting for, because they actually took the Oversight Committee out of this document and we were going to do it in a separate document. And what we proposed in our Oversight Committee, which is the last document that you have in the stapled, is that the Oversight Committee could request all this information. That was removed. I mean, it was actually removed from the Oversight Committee document that you have in front of you, and also removed from this Oversight Committee document that you have in front of you is a startup date. And we're at the point where, let me respectfully submit, that now is a great time for the Oversight Committee. You know, we worked with an Oversight Committee for 2 years, and now they're basically shut out. So my request would be to allow the Oversight Committee to have the ability to get the information they need to make meaningful decisions, important decisions about the operation of the facility, and that there also be an indication of when this Oversight Committee would begin. I know you also have requests about the makeup of that committee, but those would be my 2 requests.
So let me make sure I'm clear
Yes.
on what you're asking. And that is that the Oversight Committee not be limited to receiving information, reports that were presented to Commissioners Court, but that the Oversight Committee be empowered to ask for and to receive information from MHMR and others as well.
Yes, from MHMR as well as whoever the facility director is. I think that will give the Oversight Committee, which is going to include members of this court, and if the Oversight Committee is only reviewing routine reports provided to the court, you don't need to hear it twice, right? We actually need the people on the Oversight Committee to have the ability to get information about the inner workings of that facility to make sure it's right.
I think that's a reasonable request, and I would support.
I have a comment or two on that request, though, if you would allow me.
Go.
This is not an oversight committee. This is an advisory committee. This agreement that we have with MHMR is an agreement with the service provider that is solely within the jurisdiction of the Commissioner's Court and no other department within the county. We tried to be as flexible as we possibly could, but there can't be 2 bosses. There has to be 1 boss, and that's the Commissioner's Court. And so that's why we structured the advisory committee, to be able to get the information that they needed. If they need more information, then that's fine. Hopefully we'll have meetings very similar to when we first started the advisory committee that we have with the Resource Connection, because that's made up of users also. And it transformed into what I think is a very good committee. So to have an advisory committee that can independently demand reports from one of our vendors, I would ask that you seriously consider that. If there's a need to do that, there's the people that are on the advisory committee were the same people who participated in the development of this, and I can't fathom that any of them would be shy enough to say that I want information, but I'm not going to ask for it.
So my concern is they can ask for it, but under our documents, they can't receive it. The information only goes to the county administrator.
The documents that come to the county administrator are always available to the Commissioner's Court and will be sent to the Commissioner's Court. And if you would like for us to share that with the advisory, which we would,
I read it a different way. I read it in a way that says that the advisory committee will review reports sent to the Commissioner's Court. This place is not going to be successful if the advisory committee isn't totally looped into the circle. Exactly. And isn't, basically working very, very closely with the operator.
Exactly.
And so I agree that the flexibility is there, should be there. I'm reading it by the fact that it's not precluded that it is included. I understand Sharon, I've talked about this, and I understand where she wrote it in and then it was taken out, could be looked at as a standpoint of, no, we don't want them to have that access. I'm saying that access is understood.
Well, I don't see a problem, since it's understood, with stating it.
Yeah.
And here's what I would think about from that, and I'll just kind of, after having read through it, in the first little paragraph, or the one that says objective, the committee will make.
Which document are you reading?
This thing that we had today.
It's the next to the last
one?
document.
Okay, I got it.
And what I would suggest is in that last sentence, the committee will make recommendations instead of to the Tarrant County's Commissioners Court. I mean, they're going to make recommendations to the operator, because that's who the advisory committee is going to do. That doesn't mean that the operator has to abide by them. It just simply says they're going to be in dialogue, and that's where everything's going to get done. You know, heaven forbid that it's got to come up to the Commissioners Court for us to pass a policy that then goes back down.
So your suggestion would be the committee will make recommendations to the Tarrant County Commissioners Court and to MHMR regarding the general operation and priorities of the MHJDC.
I get what I was actually just saying is get us out of this thing and just do it to the operator. And if there's a disagreement at that point in time, they can come to us. But every time those two groups decide they want to do something, I hope it doesn't have to come to the court for us to approve it.
Could I add something? And that is that as we worked on this over the last couple of years, we used the Harris County model. And Susan and I have talked about this also. One of the things that their executive director told us was that they met frequently with their oversight committee, with their advisory board, because it helped them make a better product. So this product is for our police agencies in Tarrant County. It is for the mentally ill in Tarrant County who have low-level offenses. So how best to make those recommendations and those changes, I think, is with a very involved and informed oversight committee, advisory board, whatever you want to call it.
Susan, come on down.
I don't think there was ever any intent at all to limit the role of the advisory board.
Well, and I understand that. I don't disagree with that. But when it says that the committee will make recommendations to the court, then it seems to put a step in there that is not necessary. I mean, 9 times out of 10, y'all are going to talk, and somebody on the advisory committee is going to say, this might make it a little bit easier on our officers if we did this. And someone at your place may say to the committee, you know, if your policeman would do this, it would make it easier on us on the end. And there's going to be a change made, and that change doesn't need to come to the Commissioner's Court.
I would agree with you, Judge. What we heard from Harris County is that they considered having an advisory committee as essential to their success. In Harris County, the executive director of the MHMR Center chairs that advisory committee because its purpose is to give advice to them about how best to make improvements. And as Sharon says, their experience has been that initially they had rather frequent meetings, and then as time went by, those meetings diminished in their frequency because those kind of early hiccups had been worked through in terms of officer drop-off and forms that were used and some of those kinds of things. So we agree. We think that the advisory committee will be really important to work through those things. We don't want every little issue that somebody sees or believes they see to come to the court. And to be a discussion about the agreement we have about the operation. They should really just be routinely dealt with through the advisory process. We have a slightly different circumstance than Harris County, however, in that when Harris County began their diversion center, they began it with the notion that this would be operationalized as a permanent part of the county's budget. And so there's no evaluation of the continuation of it. In this case, we began here in Tarrant County with an agreement for 2 years of operations, and one of the things that will have to happen during that 2 years is consideration as to whether and how the operations will continue after this 2-year period. Our advisory committee here in Tarrant County provides a great mechanism to do that evaluation. While you might want to hear from us at MHMR as to whether or not we should continue to operate your diversion center after 2 years, you have every right to say, well, is that all of the opinions we should hear? No, you should hear from a broad set of stakeholders. At MHMR, we've had advisory committees for 25 plus years. We really believe that it's important to hear the voice of stakeholders as to how services can be improved. We think it's important to hear the voice of people who have had experience. In fact, many of the staff who will be working at this center will be what we call peers. That is, people with lived experiences of mental health conditions and interface with law enforcement and the criminal justice system. We think that's important. When we think about information that will be used both to improve the operations, the day-to-day operations of the center, and information that will be used for all of you to make a determination 2 years from now as to whether to continue the operations of this center, we think those determinations will be made by certainly the reports that go in routinely and regularly to the county administrator's office to review about the work of this organization or this center, but also probably additional materials, additional questions will be had. Those questions ought to come up routinely. We would not want someone to have to submit a written question in order to get a written answer. We expect that the dialogue in these committee meetings will be robust dialogue.
And I'm assuming that even within the deal, if one of the if anybody comes up and says, okay, this is a form that makes more sense to us, that it's not going to have to go through 3 chains of approval.
Right.
That it's going to, if the 2 parties agree and it doesn't, and maybe you talk to a few others, but you're just going to change it and go on, and the committee may say, well, golly, it's working better, and we appreciate that, but the committee's not going to have, you're operating it. You're going to be doing everything you can to make it more convenient and easier to all the parties, and we're not going to be the ones up here. I guess if y'all get into a point of, okay, we can't agree on this, we need somebody to act as the third party referee, then maybe the court is open. You know, by this thing, you've got 2 members of the court on the committee.
Yes, and with regard to additional questions people might have, I would only offer this. If the questions would require a lot of, of IT or technical kinds of creation of reports, there could be delays, and we ought to all give consideration to, if one person has a question, we want to be careful about what we have to go through to collect that information. And I would also offer you this: it would be our preference that if there are additional questions that are asked and materials that need to be developed, that we try and do that through the process rather than every individual member submitting things, because that can have us go in lots of different directions all at once. If one person wants the wall painted red and one person wants the wall painted blue, I can't please both people. No. We're going to have a joint agreement about it. So there's that piece. But we are not troubled by questions. We are not troubled by recommendations that we can please the requester by doing what they asked, and sometimes we can't, and we have to talk through why that is. The more we can work through a committee process so that people can balance their requests off of one another to come to what's really necessary and right and valuable, and I expect if the committee finds themselves, the committee, which will be chaired by one of you all, finds itself at some sort of loggerheads with us, then I think that will be a consideration you all have to make as to whether we're the right operator. Then we might not be the right operator if people are that troubled by the operations. So I'm going to guess that's not going to happen.
I'm going to guess that. The other thing, the first thing I had put in my notes was to change, in that paragraph I just read, to change Tarrant County Commissioners Court to the operator, which would be y'all, MHMR, and then in the roles and responsibilities, to address an earlier question in that last, specific areas of responsibilities will include, but will not be limited to, all of the stuff below.
Okay.
And then down under the committee composition, in your little comments right there, you made the statement that in Harris County, the chair of MHMR, was it the chair of MHMR or the director of the facility was the chair of the advisory committee?
It's actually the CEO is my counterpart, the CEO of the MHMR Center. But again, I'm going to say that this committee has also a purpose of providing the court with information about whether or not this facility will continue. So there's a lot of reason to have it constructed slightly differently than
so I had
Harris County.
suggested that in my particular list, I had penciled in not only a city of Fort Worth, but also a city of Arlington representative. And I agree that for maybe slightly different reasons, because the center is located in the city of Fort Worth, I feel like if there's ever a need for additional calls for security or for help and assistance, it's going to come to the Fort Worth Police. And so I am in favor also of including not only a representative from the city council, which would go with that one where I just added Arlington, but also one from the law enforcement that would be the police chief's designee. And then that still leaves 4 representatives for each one of y'all to appoint from your individual precincts.
I think those are good suggestions. Oh, I'm sorry.
And then the last thing in the frequency of meetings is just the meetings frequency and times will be set by the chair of the committee or at the request of committee members.
So I agree with those recommended changes that you had. I was going to ask for inclusion of representation from Arlington, so thanks for covering that, Judge. Here's where I'm somewhat confused. Without going back through the agreement that we passed last month, I agree that every decision that needs to be made should not be brought to the Commissioners Court, but if we are the body that's ultimately responsible for this center, I want to make sure that I understand the when and the where and the how, that we will be kept up to speed with the progress of the center. So GK or Chandler, if you could answer that question.
So what we can do, is our intent, first of all, that's why we asked that there be 2 court members on that committee so that the court would be informed. Second of all, we can make annual or monthly reports to the court initially. I'm assuming that when we have our advisory committee meetings that there will be minutes of those advisory committees that will be filed with the Commissioners Court, as we try to do with all of our committees.
Sure.
And we can initially make that a monthly update as far as the status, the number of offenders that we see and things like that. If there's any hiccups in the operations, there are going to be hiccups. There's going to be a stabilization period, and we all each recognize that, because in any new program you have stabilization. And so I think monthly updates to the court would be just fine, and we'll be more than happy to make them. Obviously, there'll be 2 court members that will be sitting on that advisory committee that will bring things forward to the court also, if there's a desire to do that. There was never an intent to cut anyone out of this process. It was simply to streamline the way that we move things through this organization, and that's how we intend to do it.
Okay, that all sounds reasonable. So my third and final concern is about the frequency of the meetings, and seeing what the CDA's proposal was on the frequency of the meetings versus the draft that was presented to us. I'll start with you, Susan, and if we're using Harris County as the model, but obviously realizing that we are 2 different counties, how frequent did Harris County's advisory committee, whatever it was called, meet? How often do you think that our committee should meet, especially at the onset of trying to get the center up and running and all of that?
So in Harris County, they initially met formally every month, and what their director has told me is that within the year, they found themselves having worked through some of the initial operational kind of challenges and hurdles, and found themselves not having robust participation in monthly meetings anymore, which is kind of a sign that people are tired of monthly meetings. And then they went to quarterly meetings. They are open to have a meeting, an ad hoc meeting, if they feel that something needs to be addressed, but mostly the operations are pretty smooth now. The center over time has moved to another location. It has combined with other programs. Some operational changes have taken place. The county has provided for some additional programming that takes place with the center. So things have changed since then. In the same vein, I would say that we would expect the full committee on a monthly basis. It may well be that there is purpose for having some ad hoc subgroups to meet over things like I remember that in Harris County they said the sign-in documentation took them some time to work through initially because they had so many different agencies. They had to come to agreement about using one document. You couldn't use 40 different documents for sign-in. Getting information back to the police agencies was important to them. That took them some time to work through that. So there may be some ad hoc committees that are just kind of working through individual issues like that. And what I would hope is that we don't define the frequency with which a committee will meet in an agreement like this. I think it should meet as frequently as is necessary. And my impression would be that would be at least monthly initially. It may be more frequently initially, but we also want to give people the freedom to meet less frequently if they need to meet less frequently.
So then is the thought that once we decide on who makes up the committee meets, and then at that time we'll be updated on what you all have decided as a committee as to the frequency of your meetings, at least for right now. Because here's part of the question. Obviously, I know there's a lot to work through, but then I am, as well as my colleagues, will be regularly asked, well, what's going on? Well, what's going on? How often does the committee meet? Things like that. Those are very reasonable questions that we should have answers to.
Yeah, I will tell you that it will be our goal would be monthly meetings initially, but I want to leave space for additional meetings for subgroups of that group for particular purposes. Given who we are and the things that are going on in our community, I would expect over the course of the first year, it is highly probable that the committee would meet every month. Do I think there will be the same high level of engagement in every stakeholder throughout the entire year? I don't know. I expect a higher level of engagement initially, just my own impression of how advisory committees and stakeholder processes work. There's usually higher engagement initially until people sort through some things and begin to believe in the process, and then generally less frequent is okay. I can't imagine any time that the frequency would ever drop below quarterly. So if we wanted to put in an agreement at least quarterly, although there's a downside to that because it sort of sets a stage in your head of quarterly meetings, I think initially we will need more frequent meetings because we are going to have police agencies across the county who need to think through how this is working for them. We'll all have to be thinking of, if the opportunity arose, would we have a second center? These are the sorts of things we want to. If the census drops, why is it dropping? Is there something about some departments that aren't using it? Is there something we need to do to encourage them? Do we need to relook at the offenses that are bringing people to this center? Or do we need to relook at training? There'll be a lot of things like that we need to consider if people aren't coming there.
Okay. And then, Sharon, did you have more to add on the meetings?
Want to speak briefly to the documents because I do think, I'm a lawyer. I think the writing matters. And given that GK said that it wasn't his intent to limit what the advisory committee could receive, although it looks like it happened in the ILA. But today he says that it wasn't his intent. Susan's statement that she wants a robust discussion. So my request, if you look at your third tab, which is the document before you today, and look at the fourth tab, which was our proposed document, I would suggest adding that last phrase under authority to the roles and responsibility, and that is that the committee can receive anything that helps the board assess success or performance of the Mental Health Jail Diversion Center. Because I think then we would be assured of a robust review, and it would be more than just review of routine reports provided to the court. I think that language that's in the agreement in front of you is limiting, and we need to have the broader language, which apparently is what they intended, of anything that helps the committee assess the success or performance of the Mental Health Jail Diversion Center. My last request is that a meeting be required of the committee within 30 days of the passing of this from you all.
Thank you.
All right, so Judge, I think your suggestions are good ones. I don't see any harm in the last request from Sharon about anything that they need to assess the performance. I think that ought to be added in the appropriate place. Let's get this to a point where we can adopt it today.
Okay, so
And that we can appoint the membership of the committee so that they can meet prior to the opening of the facility in December.
I am hopeful that if we get this passed today, that we can do everything we can to try to have appointments next week to allow the committee to start up in December, because I have a feeling that there's liable to be a lot of things that the police and y'all and the sheriff and everybody else is going to want to understand before that soft opening is going to occur.
Right.
So here's what I have down as the changes. So Chandler, you check them off or tell me that's different. Objective, we're going to take Tarrant County Commissioners Court out and we're going to put in its place operator, which will be MHMR. In the roles and responsibilities, the last sentence before you get to the dots or the bullets, specific areas of responsibility will include, but will not be limited to, and then all of those, and then the last dot to be added, there'll be a last dot added or bullet added that says anything that helps the committee assess success or performance of the MHJDC.
Okay.
And then down under the committee composition, under the president of the Tarrant County Law Enforcement Executives Association, let's add or designee on that one. On the next one, the city of Fort Worth and the city of Arlington representative. And then a representative appointed by the Fort Worth Law Enforcement Executive, or
Chief of Police.
Chief of Police is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And it says here that one of the members of the Commissioner Court will chair the committee. I'd rather that be, quite honestly, I'd rather it be you. Unless you got some other person you'd rather see other than Commissioner's Court.
We're going to be happy with however you choose to compose the advisory committee.
What about the executive director, whoever you put as the executive director of that facility?
Okay, that I would now see. I just said I was going to be agreeable about everything, and now I'm not going to be.
Aren't you glad I asked that question?
Yes, I do not think you should have the executive director of the facility. I think that you are advising that person as to the operations, and so that person shouldn't chair the advisory group.
Well, what about the designee or the president of the Tarrant County Law Enforcement Executives Association or their designee? Because they're going to represent all the police chiefs, right?
But the operations of this center is about more than the police activities. So, and again,
if they don't bring them there.
I would suggest that it either be a member of this court or it be Susan.
I agree.
I would be inclined to think that is probably what would make the most sense. Yeah.
Okay, then. Chair would be, so it would be one member of the Commissioner's Court or the executive director.
We need to choose. Well, that's simple. We need to choose.
Well, you're certainly going to make the decision as to who would be the chair, and perhaps, you would want a member of the court in the first year of the operations, and then you can make a decision as to whether you would continue that approach as time goes by.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's reasonable.
I agree.
And understand that this is a policy of the court, and the court can change this policy at any time.
At any time, sure.
Meeting frequency at the time set by the chair of the committee or at the request of the committee members? Is that okay, or do you want to, I know we had discussions about it, I don't know that we actually resolved it.
I think outlining how frequently the committee ought to meet in this document is getting too far into the weeds. Let the committee decide.
I'm fine with the language that you're suggesting, as long as the points that GK listed in terms of how the commissioner's court would be kept updated, that is clearly on paper and that we abide by that.
I got no problem with that either.
Okay.
I don't either.
Let's adopt a document.
You got all the things you think you need. You got to change that. Okay. So we got a motion, we got a second for the amended documents. Councilwoman Beck.
Oh, I think she had.
I believe she left.
She left because she heard she was going to get what she wanted. Okay. Mr. Tomakasi, I hear what you're saying. I think it's going to be, we'll have to work on how we're going to include the participant or someone who may have experienced the experience.
I think that that is in some ways handled by the fact that the staff will have lived experience.
Yeah, and I hope that we can do that. I mean, I know that on the JPS board, we specifically have a position, I believe, for, or we used to have a position. For someone who was, a consumer of that. So we'll work through that and keep that in mind as we go forward. So with that.
Judge, can I ask for one clarification? Frequency of meetings, I think I heard two different things. Are we adding in the or at request of committee members or not?
We are.
We are, or at the request of committee members.
Is there anything about when those meetings would begin? Like
Well, they're gonna begin as soon as we get this thing started, because I think there's gonna be several meetings.
Before we get started, might be helpful too.
They gotta meet before we open this facility, which will open in December.
Okay.
Don't put it in the policy, just make it part of it.
We'll just make it happen.
Yeah.
Okay, and then again, let's all focus on trying to have our appointments ready by next week so that the committee can begin meeting hopefully by the beginning of December.
And Chandler, you will circulate the revised document that we're just about to adopt.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And it shall be correct.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
I want to thank you, and I also want to tell you, Judge and Commissioners, that at MHMR we pledge that we've operated programs like this for over 50 years. We believe in these programs. We believe in their value in the community. We are grateful for the support, and we're going to do everything in our power to make this successful. So we really do look forward to it. Thank you.
We're excited about it.
We look forward to the partnership, Susan. Thank you.
Okay, so if we can now go to the briefing agenda, we're going to ask Mr. Early to make his presentation concerning JPS.
Thank you, Mr. Manius. Judge, Commissioners, thank you all so much. It's casual day for me.
I was going to say, he's kind of got that short timers looking at him.
Yeah, it kind of does.
It is not due to that. It is today, tomorrow, and the next day is turkey toss at JPS. So every employee gets a turkey, a ham, or a fruit basket, and I am out there to provide that along with a bunch of other folks.
So you're tossing turkeys?
Yes, tossing them
realize
into.
they don't fly.
Yeah, right, especially in the condition they're in now.
Is that kind of like tossing paper towels?
Yeah, you just kind of fade back like Brady and throw it, or Dak Prescott, whoever your favorite is. No, you place it in the back of the car or the back seat, and we do it through a drive-through. And we represent COVID and aren't really good about that. A couple things I did want to say, and I won't take up much of your time. I have some recommendations on the diversion. No, just kidding. What I do want to do is, though, express my sincere thank you to an incredible Commissioners Court and the role that you all play. And it's not hyperbole, and it's not anything that is not worth mentioning, because you as county commissioners play such a positive role for JPS. Your support, your board appointees, your guidance, and your partnership. And I think people might look from the outside and say, well, what are they doing, and why is this and why is that? I would tell any county or any public hospital system in the nation to run like this one and have the relationship we have with this Commissioners Court. It is hugely valuable, and our board members are better off for it. And the working relationship that we will have down the road with the bond and how we spend money and what the health care of JPS and the health care of this county looks like will be something that many will emulate. And I want to thank you for that. Retiring is exceptionally hard in the sense that you don't want to leave 7,000 incredible people at JPS. But at the same time, you do want to make sure that you're there for your mom and your dad, especially when they struggle through some tough situations right now. And you want to be able to hold the hand of somebody you love and not lose any time. And you want to be able to do that. And I think sometimes in business and in a workplace, we get so intoxicated by it, you forget the real important things in life, and it's friends and family. And it's the people you've come to love. I will miss the amount of phone calls that I get now asking how we should spend the bond money. That will be such a regret that people will forget my number quickly when you don't have $800 million behind you. But that's okay. But the other thing is, to be a CEO of a public hospital and be invited to speak at the conference of the tax office every year. And I did that for 7 years. What a joy that is. What an honor to do that. Why would they ask the CEO? I realize they started it because they couldn't find anybody else to speak, but they were kind to keep it up. And those are neat honors, and I want to thank Wendy for that. And if I had the honor of thanking those before, and I miss Ron, and Ron started those, and those were wonderful. And that tax office is another attribute of Tarrant County. There are very few entities that you can say, the tax office is something that you should really look for and revere. We've got one, and the people that work down there are amazing, and I really enjoyed what I was able to do with them. And some of the things we were able to do in the county, CEOs of public hospitals don't get asked to MC the HEB Chamber of Commerce for 11
No, it's not that
years.
they don't get asked, they don't accept.
That's probably right. They don't accept, and they're fools for not accepting.
How many years in a row?
I think we did it for 11 years, and they were kind to tolerate me. And those are such neat honors that I will take with me. And to be able to come before the court monthly, whether you all were saying we don't like what's happening or you all had tough questions, this is what CEOs should do that run public hospitals, is to be a part of everything that you all do. You should stand up here and get grilled at times. You should stand and get accolades and get discounted for the things you didn't do right. So I want to thank you. The other thing I want to say is it is an incredible time at JPS. Last week at JPS was one of our busiest weeks we've had. You all are probably familiar with Leapfrog. Leapfrog is a national survey on quality. It was established by a private sector movement that questioned the quality and safety of our hospitals in America. And so they put a panel together to look at a series of requirements for safety that hospitals go through. So every hospital in America is reviewed under this. and they give you a letter grade from F to A. There was an unfortunate time at JPS when it struggled with an F. It moved from an F to a D. And last week on Tuesday, Leapfrog nationally announced that JPS was an A. And what's powerful about that is that truly is fixing the bolts on an airplane while it flies. Because you're going through COVID and the challenges of COVID, which is real, which occupied at one time 210 beds of JPS's 537 beds, with people who were either dying or struggling for life and breathing. And you take a staff and go through that. You take somebody's unfortunate situation of them dying while you're holding their hand because they have COVID, and then you listen to all the politics of COVID. It's gut-wrenching. And for those team members over there to do what JPS did is phenomenal. And then to do it and get an A rating for their quality standards, that's a public hospital, aside from their CEO, that's a public hospital that this community can take great pride in. At the same time we were getting that announcement, we had Joint Commission come in. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Joint Commission, that's like inviting your mother-in-law to spend a week with you and making sure that she tells you everything you're not doing right. And Joint Commission is a real challenge. They're good people and they do good things, but you're inviting people into your house to say, review everything we do and write us up for it. And what was amazing about this Joint Commission review is when we had the announcement of being a level A, or getting the A rating from Leapfrog, 4 out of the 6 Joint Commission members came over to join us in our celebration. That was incredibly impactful for our team. The other thing is the Joint Commission during this review had more citings of best practices than citations. And to get that kind of review from Joint Commission when we had 10 surveyors in the building reviewing JPS is pretty amazing. At the same time, the State Health and Human Services Commission decided to come in and do an inspection of all of our nutritional services with no citations. And that's really fixing bolts on an airplane while it flies. So I couldn't be more proud. And the fact that you all have tolerated me and allowed me to be the CEO at JPS has been pretty amazing. And I am grateful for your friendship. I'm grateful for you disciplining me when I needed to be. And I'm grateful for you patting me on the back when you needed. And it was so powerful. So I am grateful. I am thankful. Mr. Manius, thank you for the numerous calls we had, and most of those calls were not 8 to 5. You know, those calls come at 6 o'clock in the morning, they come at Friday night at 10 o'clock, and they come Saturday in the afternoon, and there's not a whole lot of people that realize how many phone calls you all get trying to make sure that hospital and that health network runs properly. So I'm grateful, I'm thankful, and I appreciate it very much. I'm going to miss you. I will miss you all. I really will. You all are a great group of people. Thank you.
We're not expecting this to be the last time we'll speak.
Thank you all.
You came in 2000, well, you were here before 2009.
Yes, sir.
I guess we gave you the not interim but fully hired title in 2009.
Yes, sir.
But I will tell you in 2007 when I got to sit in this chair that on a regular weekly basis I was getting phone calls, and they were not the friendly phone calls about your predecessor. And so those stopped when you took over, whether it was fully designated crowned CEO or whatever, you stopped those phone calls. And I tell everybody that you have the passion for the people you serve. And that's what makes you such a good internal CEO. But you've highlighted a few of the things that make you such a great external, and that's your ability to communicate not only with your CEOs of the hospitals around you, but more importantly to the citizens who look to the county and want to know what's going on at JPS. You mentioned Leapfrog. You are always gracious enough not to mention other folks. I am not so much that. The hospital to the east got an F. You mentioned that we were not there, that we had previously gotten that, and I think, again, it's because of your encouragement of the people around you. You said it's not you, it's the people around you, and we all know that about about the entities that we have the honor or the privilege to be a part of and to lead. But you take that very seriously, and your people realize that. You also, in the last, or JPS in the last year, has been rated, I believe, the top, is it just top hospital or top nonprofit or?
Top hospital.
Top hospital
Yes,
in
sir.
the country. And you should be very proud of that. Your ability to communicate on a very basic level is what I think has made everybody understand what an exceptional facility and what an exceptional operation you have helped create, and we're going to be hard pressed to replace you.
Thank you. You're more than kind.
And we're going to miss you.
I appreciate y'all very, very much.
I
Yes,
would
sir.
like to say that I was around when you came to JPS, and it was not as CEO.
Yes, sir.
It was as executive vice president, as I described it at the time, in charge of warm and fuzzy.
Yes, sir.
Because the CEO at the time was neither warm nor fuzzy.
Sure.
And you were brought to JPS to put a kinder face to the administration of that hospital. And you did that extremely well, so well, in fact, that when the position of CEO became vacant, you were the right man at the right time to reestablish the relationships of JPS in the broader healthcare community of North Texas. Again, bringing warm and fuzzy into the process.
Thank you.
I appreciate the service that you have given to JPS and to the citizens of Tarrant County. Our public hospital is much better off now than it was when you came.
Thank you.
And all of us should aspire to that in the things we set our hands to do. Make it better. Make it the best you can make it. And then get the hell out of the way and let somebody else take it to the next level. I appreciate you, Robert, as a CEO and as a friend. And again, I say that we are much better off at the end of your tenure than we were at the beginning. And I thank you for that.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
Robert, I guess I came, you were already here.
Yes, sir.
But you were not in your role
Yes, sir.
today, as Commissioner Brooks said. And, but I recall that the morale of the employees was nearing an all-time level that wasn't good.
Yes, sir.
And the remarkable job you did when you took over. And of course, I think you never forgot the patient, but you also never forgot your employees.
Thank you.
And you and them lifted that entire ship from the bottom to the top. That's remarkable. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I remember when I first came to Fort Worth, I met with Mayor Bob Bolin, and we had lunch together. And Mayor Bolin said, "Young man, you're going to be turning a ship around." And he put out his iced tea and he said, "But you're turning it in a river." And I think that probably was part of it. I'm truly honored. Thank you all so very, very much. Y'all be good. Bye-bye.
Much for all you've done, my friend. And you did walk into a very vulnerable position with the CEO that we had out there, if you want to call him a CEO. You did what nobody else could do, in my opinion. And I want to thank you for that. That person needed to move. And with your help, he's no longer with us. And also for the job that you've done. You've always been there when I call, and you call me a lot at different hours of the day and night, and I appreciate those calls. You've just been tremendous for Tarrant County. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Johnson, that's the first time I've heard you describe my predecessor without cussing. Thank you very much. That was incredibly powerful of you.
I held my tongue.
I think we may have just missed the word.
I think we did. He's the only one at the court that has a 7-second delay. So thank you, Commissioner, and thank you all very, very much. It is an honor. And thank you all. You all have had to, for the past 8 years, see my backside. And I am grateful for that. So thank you all very much.
Robert, warm regards to both Trish and Bryce.
You bet. Thank you very much. I'm honored.
He doesn't like to fly, and so it's quite appropriate that when he does move, that he's going to get to travel with his horses. That's exactly right.
I will be moving horses and a farm and everything else, and that will be interesting. But I'll do as much on the ground with horses as I possibly can. So there's a chance that you'll see me and I'll be driving horses. You know, think, who's that idiot? And you go, oh, that guy. You remember him. So thank you.
Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we can now go once again to the briefing agenda, and we're going to ask Mr. Chinasia to come forward and make his presentation.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the court.
Morning, Benny.
Morning, Benny.
Back again with an update on COVID-related issues. Flu is behaving, but starting to get to the baseline, so we'll add that over the next couple of weeks. So currently, we're at a plateau. The downward trend is still intact on our hospitalizations and COVID cases, but I've noticed a flatlining on the hospitalizations and most other indicators, so I'll kind of explain that as we go. But I do have good news to share. Today is one of those days where we have 0 deaths to report. So finally, we're getting there. So that's great news for us. But we have 4,828 total deaths that have been reported during the pandemic related to COVID. And then 367,000 and some change on cases. I think this morning there were 270-ish ballpark. And then our hospitalizations in Tarrant County are 222. So quite a contrast. You heard Mr. Early just say they were close to 210, 220 in JPS at one time. This is all across Tarrant County, so quite the striking change from when we peaked. Pediatric hospitalizations have also flatlined. So on the adult hospitalizations, last week we were at 221. This week we're at 222, and the numbers kind of hovered around there. Pediatrics, we had 4 last week. This week we have 5, so we're again flatlining there. Trauma service area E starting to still decline, but it's evening out. 776 people in the hospital. I think there was a drop of maybe a 50 or so in that total number. So 4.97% of hospital capacity. But those of you who watch the colors on the chart, they have deepened a little bit. Some of the reds and oranges have started to pop back up in some outlying counties. And even in Tarrant County and some neighboring communities, the colors have become a little bit more, upward, if you will. So we'll see how that develops. It could be the post-Halloween bump, but it could also be last year exactly the same thing happened around Halloween, or after Halloween we started to sort of turn in a slow turn, and then in the holidays we took off. We'll see what happens this year, but hopefully we'll be able to keep it subdued. The one interesting thing that I wanted to mention, there's a federal court ruling now that mask mandates by Texas schools are allowed. So I just wanted to point that out because there's been a lot of debate all throughout the summer whether that's okay or not. I think this might be the final ruling, hopefully. I know they're probably going to get challenged, but at least it was currently, I think, November 10th when they came out with it. Trends overall, like I said, remain in a downward trend that is intact for now. Case counts on the left are declining. Death data on the right side has a clear downtrend. But the rate of spread, the R naught, even though it's below 1, which is straight good news, striking change from last week, from 0.81 to 0.98. So there's some, bubbling underneath the surface that's happening. As long as it stays below 1, I'm not too worried about the undulations of the data. It happens. But here's where I started to kind of get a little, let's look at this more carefully kind of thing. So the positivity rate is at 5.26%, but if you look at the chart on the left-hand side on the top, there's a clear hook developing, and as you look at all the other charts, that hook is developing on every single data point. And that's where I'm calling this is a sort of a flatlining, a turning point. Hopefully we avoid the upward swing, but if you look at the hook that developed last year around this time frame, it was the same kind of a picture, and then it just kind of skyrocketed from there during the holidays. So we want to avoid that. So what should we do? It is a time for caution, because I know different communities are reacting differently to the downward decline. I'll be honest, when I go out in Tarrant County in the public, there's very few people wearing a mask. But if you go to some other neighboring communities, there are mask-wearing folks, almost half or more. It makes a difference. Time to get vaccinated. Our numbers are good. I mean, vaccination, especially the booster numbers I'll show you, they're doing really well. But new age groups just opened. Younger kids are eligible. Let's take them while the cases are low. There's been a lot said. Oh, it doesn't impact the kids. They don't really get that sick. They don't die. CDC just came out with more data. During this recent surge in the summer, kids aged 5 to 11, 1.9 million cases across the country. Now you can imagine these kids don't live alone by themselves, right? They go home to family, to friends, to neighbors, daycare settings. All of these places get impacted when the child is sick. There's a risk of spread from that sick child. So let's get these kids vaccinated and get them protected. Continue to wear masks and avoid unnecessary large crowds. Those are going to stay here for a while till we have these sort of ups and downs happening. When there is a surge, get more caution, layer more protections. When we're in a decline, you can relax a little bit. Vaccine update. The fully vaccinated counts continue to improve. We have a 1.079 million, so it's almost getting close to 1.1 million people fully vaccinated. And then the percentages shifted a little bit, as I mentioned. Now we added the denominator of the 5 to 11, so that number dropped from 61 or 62% to about 56%. But that's still good. I mean, we're making good progress. And I wanted to show you a couple new additions, and we'll keep trying to shift the age group to the top. I'm not quite sure why it keeps coming back in the middle. But the 5 to 11 year age group I've kind of highlighted, and if you hover over it on the dashboard, you can actually see the raw numbers. Now this data is from last Wednesday, which only had like 3 or 4 days worth of reporting. So it was showing only 1,200 some vaccine doses given around the county. But I can tell you this past Saturday at the Arlington ISD event, our public health team gave about 500 some doses, out of which 270 were younger age kids, 5 to 11. I think countywide data, when this report comes in for next week, is probably going to show close to 8,000 to 10,000 doses being given across the county. It's a slower start than I had hoped for, but it's good. We can take that and continue to add on that. Question?
Yes. Mandy, when is there a time when you're going to start vaccinating with the booster, Moderna booster, those 18 and up? Right now it's 60, I believe it's 65.
So it's available to 18 and up for either they have underlying health conditions or they have high-risk occupations. It's the generally healthy, no other issues, and they don't have any high-risk occupation. So it's kind of an honor-based system. A lot of people have come to us, I'm in a high-risk occupation. Okay, we're not going to challenge you. So, I mean, it's open to the public. There's really nobody telling no. See what I'm saying? It's an honor-based system. If they say, I'm in retail, we're a restaurant worker, we're not asking for a paper, show us that you're a restaurant worker, they can get it. Yes, sir. So this younger age group, the numbers are going to improve is what I'm saying. But overall, we've had some good progress. And this booster numbers are really encouraging me. Last week I showed you the total count was 108,000. This week we're at 133,000 for the county. That's good activity on booster uptake within our community. It will help. It boosts immunity. I don't know if you all read the former FDA chief. He's now on the advisory board of the Pfizer company, and he made a statement that U.S. is missing an opportunity while the cases are low of getting people boosted, because data is starting to show, especially on the Pfizer vaccine, that you do need that booster. Because otherwise the immunity level is starting to decline. They're seeing breakthrough cases. It's available. Pfizer is available. Moderna is available. Nobody's really stopping. It's widely available. So I encourage the public to come get their booster shot.
Vinny, if you got somebody that's in the hospital, not for COVID, but just other sort, and is in there for an extended period of time, do the hospitals get boosters, or how would you get someone a booster inside of a hospital?
They should have the ability to give boosters to their patients.
Okay.
That's been remember the conversations we had early on with the hospitals when the vaccine rolled out? Their goal was to take care of their patients. They didn't really want to delve a lot into community clinics, which they did eventually because it was so much demand.
Yeah, but that's when they were getting them straight from the state, and they were going to the hospitals.
They're still getting, they can reorder supplies for their patients and things like that. So there's always some stock. Like I know, talk to THR, they have some stock still available for their patients. And hospitals are also managing through their provider offices, affiliated practices. They send a vaccine out to the providers as well. Latest updates on all the vaccine clinics that are going to be open is going to be available on our tarrantcounty.com/vaccine finder. And as I mentioned earlier, the event on Saturday at the Arlington ISD Dan Dibert Center was a success. In a matter of 4 hours, there were 556 total doses given, and 274 of those were in the 5 to 11 age group. We have other similar events now planned because this was a success. Everman ISD this Thursday, November 18th, 5 to 7 p.m. We're going to try to replicate. With 2 hours, we may not get these numbers, but I'm hoping there's a good showing. I know there's conversation that I was sitting there. My team's having conversations with Northwest ISD, so we're trying to finalize a date. So keep an eye out on that website, and we'll try to advertise through the media and social media channels as well on these dates. But seemingly, people are liking the idea of coming to a school setting, getting their kids vaccinated, and they bring the whole family. There's a lot of booster demand at those locations.
Before you move on
Yes,
from
ma'am.
that, any updates to the allocation of the pediatric vaccine?
No, not that I've recently heard, because initial demand was slower. So we still have our stock, but we will be making a reorder request, and then I'll find out if there's any limitations.
Okay.
But it's not just here. I think all across, initial demand is a little slower. And what may be driving some of that is that we are not getting good numbers. A lot of these providers are first-time providers of vaccine, and they've not reported into systems like the state systems. And all across the country, we're hearing the same remark: let the data catch up and let's see what's what. So hopefully in a week or so, we'll be making a reorder request as some of these bigger events, bring the demand.
Very good. Thank you.
Testing demand continues to decline and stay low. So last week we ended one of our sites at the Mansfield ISD's what's that location?
The Performing Arts Center.
There you go, Performing Arts Center.
Yeah.
It took me a minute. So that location ended, and then this week we're going to end our location at the Arlington ISD location that we had on, I think it was from Pioneer Parkway or somewhere in that area.
Benton Plaza.
I'm sorry?
Benton Plaza.
Benton Plaza is going to stay open. So we will have 3 locations currently that we're going to keep open. The Resource Connection, Northeast Annex, and the Benton Plaza location. They're going to be open 1 day a week. I don't remember correctly. I think Resource Connection is on Sundays, Northeast Annex is on Saturdays, and Benton's on Mondays, if I recall correctly. And then we will have our Northwest Clinic continue to operate all 5 days, Monday through Friday, at the Northwest Sub Courthouse. So in each precinct, we'll have at least 1 location. What we are planning to do is, 1, keep these vendor-hosted locations sort of open for the next 2-3 weeks to see what the demand is. If the demand picks up, we can quickly add days to these. If the demand continues to die off, we're going to keep scaling down on the vendor-hosted locations. And we're at the same time trying to internalize the testing capability to all our clinics. The one at Northwest is kind of our pilot, try to figure out the process and see what things need to happen. And then we'll add the capability at all our other clinics one by one. The contract that we have with the vendor allows us to quickly scale up the ability at locations. Sometimes they need lead time to get tents and staffing and all those type of things back. So as a backup, we're adding the capability within our clinics so that if the demand does come, we can have that up and ready and then slowly build out the sites as well. So we'll keep the schedule updated on our website at tarrantcounty.com/COVID testing. Otherwise, our hotline should be able to get people those answers as well. So that's all I have. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinny.
Vinny.
Members of the court, we can now go to the administrator section, and I'm going to ask Mr. Schaffner to come forward and talk about item number 2. Are you going to do receive and file?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good morning, Judge and Commissioners.
Good morning.
Morning.
We are seeking court action to receive and file the Tarrant County COVID-19 Recovery Report for November 8th through 14th.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And then on the second item, we have an A and a B action, so there will be 2 separate actions. First, we are seeking court's approval of the 6 recommendations regarding the FRF budget. This would be adding 5 programs. First, a supplemental rental and utility assistance program. This is the for $500,000. This is the program that we've discussed a couple times in Commissioners Court, which would catch those individuals that for rental and utility assistance that have fallen through other programs. Second, a coronavirus relief fund to FRF funded. So this is the last of these positions that need to be swapped over for Medical Reserve Corps recruiter and public health. A contract compliance staff member for audit. And the next one is a partnership with Tarrant County Housing Finance Corporation, $405,000 in various applications and programs that have been evaluated through TCHFC as well as our internal FRF program. And then finally, an assistance to dependent caregivers through HRA. This, again, was an item that was recommended to us through the Tarrant County Housing Finance Corporation. And then the final item would be changing one previously authorized sheriff's office position. It's a grade 53 to a grade 53 from a deputy to a detention corporal training individual, and this change would allow under this SOTO to be able to have more focus and time spent on actually training future detention officers. So we are seeking court's approval of those 5 additions and the 1 change. And again, this is just beyond the budget document. We will come back in subsequent weeks with additional agendized items, contracts and positions.
5 items under action A and 1 under B.
5 actions under A plus the change. So we're seeking the approval of the 5 items to be added to programs to be added to the budget, plus the change of the SO position.
Move approval of action item A.
Second. We have a motion and a second. A spreadsheet.
Yes, sir.
Are you gonna basically include that every week, or is it included someplace where I didn't?
Yes, sir. It's, I believe, the second attachment on the agenda for item number 2.
Okay. I couldn't get mine to open up, but let me try it again.
Yep, there it is.
So the items in blue on that spreadsheet are the items that we are requesting to be added, and the item in kind of a salmon color would be the change item, that change position.
There's no additional fiscal impact on the change position, is there?
Correct. It's a 52 to 53. It's neutral.
It opened this time, so I'm good.
I'm glad.
Okay, so you're saying that okay, I see the 405, I see the 500, I see the 30.
Yes, sir.
And I see the 49. Where is the 70?
If you scroll up, it's under Focus Area 1. It's at the very bottom of Focus Area 1.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And then the action item B is to receive and file the 2 items that are FRF funded that are on the agenda today, both of which are under the HR section. One is an approval of changes to the table of organization, County Administrator's Office, and Domestic Relations Office. This is, again, the final action for a previously CRF-funded position to be changed to an FRF position. And then the other one is a approval of change to the table of organization, the Criminal District Attorney's Office. This is a position swap from a previously authorized ACDA civil division to a white-collar crime division attorney. So if we could get a receive and file for those 2.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Let me ask you a question. I think it's on the first item, that document that won't open.
Yes, sir.
Is there some reason to that?
No, sir. I'm unadvised on what we can do in future agendas is make sure we...
Were you all not able to open your...
I was after all.
Judge, were you able to get yours open?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Commissioner Fickus, we will, in fact...
Here, I've got a copy just...
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Russell.
Members of the court, I'm going to go ahead and do item number 4, and then Mr. Merrick will come up and do item number 5. On item number 4, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve a capital asset purchase from Shumatsu Systems as it relates to an LCMS machine with the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's Laboratory Division. Let me just go into this just a little bit. Last year, we entered into an agreement with Shumatsu to receive this particular device. It was approved by the Commissioners Court. We went ahead and did that. The purpose of the acceptance of the machine at that time was to work with that company to make a determination if in fact it would be a benefit for us to have a machine such as that, and also to provide data to Shimatsu as it tested out a new version of that machine. As part of that agreement, we would be allowed to purchase that machine at a 40% discount. And what we're asking for today is that we be allowed to purchase that machine. This item has been included in the FY22 budget, and we're seeking your approval. We've also spoken with Dr. Crowns this morning, our new medical examiner, and he is fully supportive of the purchase of this machine.
I guess at the point in time, because I called him earlier this morning, he knew nothing about it.
Yeah, we called him afterwards, Judge.
Okay. And he is approving, he is fully on board with us buying the machine.
Yes, yeah. This particular machine has tremendously newer technology, and it allows us to analyze designer drugs and specialized drugs. And we've always had a mass spectrometer to do that, but with the LC part of this, it really benefits. We always had to submit that to a different lab because we didn't have the capability of doing that. Now we'll have it.
My only concern was we got a new ME coming on. We shouldn't be doing anything between now and the time that he hits the ground that he hadn't approved.
Yeah, we talk to him once or twice a week.
Well, you didn't talk to him until later on today on this item. So I'm just saying, if we're going to have anything on the agenda next week, because that's the last time it'll be on the agenda before he hits the ground, he needs to have approved it before it comes. I hope, at least from my standpoint, if I'm going to support it, it's going to have to be approved by him. And I'll take y'all's word that y'all call him after I talk to him.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Then, Shelley, you want to do item number 5? And on item number 5, we do have a person that we need to call.
Good morning again. Commissioners, and Judge, we have for your approval this morning an agreement between Tarrant County and Tarrant Eye Resources, doing business as Fort Worth Eye and Tissue Bank, for the provision of tissue recovery services over at the medical examiner's office.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We do have an audience participation, and I'm going to go ahead and call him, and then after he's made his comments, then we'll have any discussion that the court would like to have.
Hi, you've reached the personal cell phone for Kevin Meyer. Please leave a message and I'll call you back as soon as I can. Thanks.
At the tone, please record your message. When you've finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Mr. Meyer, this is Judge Whitley. I will call you back in just a couple of minutes.
We didn't get your message either because you were not speaking or because of a bad connection.
Yeah, it must have been a bad connection.
Okay. Judge, excuse me. Go ahead. It was my understanding that this agreement did not exclude life gift.
That's correct.
That's correct.
And what our goal is to, and I think that was the issue that Mr. Meyer raised, because he is with Life Gift. And what our intent is to enter into a similar agreement with Life Gift for the same access to the medical examiner's office.
Does this have any effect on them today?
No, it will not. They will still have full access.
Okay.
Okay, I've had conversations with LifeGive, numerous conversations yesterday, and they're concerned about the agreement. They feel that it certainly has the potential to exclude them. They work together with Fort Worth Eye Bank now, but that could change if CEOs changed, if philosophies changed. So we were asking for the opportunity to bring, they weren't even aware of this agreement, okay, until Thursday afternoon, when Fort Worth Iron Bank contacted them and sent them a copy of it. So they weren't aware of it, according to Kevin Meyer, who's the CEO of LifeGift. And he was just asking for that opportunity to be involved in the process. So that was more or less the goal. Mr. Manias proposed that we go ahead and approve Fort Worth, and that the two parties converse, discuss on what works for them as far and what would work for us, and we do a very similar, basically identical agreement next week for LifeGift. So we do the one here for Fort Worth I, and then the next week we do a very similar one.
I got no problem with that.
They had that conversation yesterday afternoon. I got a call back later after that conversation and was told that that was fine with them. I have not personally talked to anybody at Fort Worth I and Bank. I understand there is this is a facility use agreement, and that the only two companies that will be utilizing our facilities are those two companies right now, unless we allow somebody else. And both of those companies are nonprofits and have been around our area, serving our area for a long time. So.
I
think that's still need a second.
I'm going to try to call her back. Well, we have a second.
Okay.
So we will have an identical agreement next week for LifeGift?
That is our intention, yes, sir.
All right.
Is the DA okay with this arrangement?
Yes, we've approved it.
Will you come to the mic? Or unless,
Did I get a name?
Did you hear him? He can't hear you.
Yes, Commissioner, we've approved the agreement.
Hi, you reached the personal cell phone for Kevin Meyer. Please leave the message.
I think he thinks his call's not necessary. He submitted that request 4 or 5 hours, or 3 or 4 hours before these conversations
Took place. Okay.
So if there's no further discussion, please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Move to receive and file personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file a personnel agenda. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Good morning. Looks like it's still morning. We have a few more items for the court this morning. Actually, items 2, 3, and 4 are all requests for TO changes. The first change is being requested by the County Administrator's Office. He's requesting 2 reclasses effective November 17th. These reclasses have been reviewed by the Job Evaluation Committee. We're looking at an impact to the general fund of approximately $16,400 and some change.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. The next TO change involves the County Administrator's Office as well as DRO. There's a project position that's currently in the County Administrator's Office. It's been working actually in DRO. The request is twofold. We're requesting a transition of the position from a temporary position to a full-time position. This review has, this change has been reviewed by JEC. And the second part of the request is a change from CARES funding to ARPA funding. This information has appeared on a previous report submitted to Commissioner's Court. The impact to ARPA would be approximately $89,283 and some change.
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The final TO change comes from the Criminal District Attorney. Russell mentioned this in his presentation earlier. This is the request to reassign an Attorney 5, currently in civil. The interest is for this position to function in the white-collar crimes unit. Maybe I said that backwards. As Russell mentioned earlier, this is fiscally neutral, and there's no JEC review required.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The next two items, items 5 and 6, are requests for waivers. The first one is from Facilities Management. They're requesting a waiver of 304 vacation hours. Their operations, or facilities operations manager, retired at the end of October. We're looking at an impact to the general fund of a little bit more than $700.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I thought we double filled that position. Isn't that Tracy's Pelly's?
No, this is Mark Owens.
Okay. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And the final waiver is from Public Health. Their financial portfolio manager is leaving, retiring at the end of this month. Public Health is requesting a waiver of 376 vacation hours. There is no impact to the general fund. This position is funded by the 1115 waiver fund. We are looking, though, at an impact to that fund of about $4,200.
Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And then our final item is actually a double fill as well as a waiver. This is Judge Fitzpatrick. His court coordinator is leaving county service mid-January. We are requesting, or there is a request for a double fill for 1 month and a waiver of 87 hours at a cost to the general fund of about $7,100.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Meyer, apparently his phone didn't like our number and rejected it. We have already taken action. We've already moved along. I don't know that there's any reason at this point we can call and talk with him since we're going to be bringing his thing back next week. So I am of a mind not to call him at this point or try to link up with him because we've already taken action and we've already moved on.
I agree.
Okay, so I will communicate with him subsequent to the meeting. Vinny.
Public Health has 3 items for your consideration. First one is we're requesting approval to submit a grant application to Nato for our Medical Reserve Corps Operational Readiness Award. I believe this application will bring us about $10,000 for training of our MRC volunteers.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Second item is the request for approval of a subrecipient contract between Tarrant County and MHMR related to our CDC COVID-19 Health Disparities Grant. If y'all recall, we received a large grant, $27 million over the course of 2 years. Part of that is about 11 or 12 subrecipient awards. This is one of them, about $500,000 going to MHMR. They'll focus on their clientele, work on educational toolkits, helping us get vaccination efforts done, all those type of things, encouraging their clientele related to COVID vaccinations.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Final item, request for approval of Amendment 1 of a subrecipient award contract between Tarrant County and the Hispanic Wellness Coalition, authorizing Tarrant County Auditor to release advanced funding to Hispanic Wellness Coalition. I think the amount is about $20,000 so they can do the appropriate hiring to get the work going.
Move
approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lynn, very glad it's you here today and not Mr. Beecham. LSU got beat by Arkansas.
Oh, I'm surprised you didn't get a phone call.
Me too. But my phone probably has rejected him just like the previous phone would have rejected us.
Good afternoon. We have 3 items for your consideration. The first item is an award recommendation for bid number 2022-035. This is the sale of recycled paper for 60-plus tons of sorted white ledger and 40-plus tons of sorted office paper and 20-plus tons of old corrugated containers for facilities management. This award is to the highest bidder, Texas Recycling, per unit price.
Move
approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The second item is also an award recommendation regarding bid number 2022-006. This is our annual contract for inmate hygiene supplies for the Sheriff's Office and for Juvenile Services, awarding to the primary, secondary, and alternate vendors listed in the court communique per unit price.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And the third and last item is also an award recommendation regarding bid number 2022-016. This is our annual contract for dishwashing and laundry chemicals for the Sheriff's Office and Juvenile Services, awarding to the primary vendor UNX Industries and the secondary vendor Echo Lab per unit price.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Judge, I have a request.
Yes, sir.
If you would start being nicer about Arkansas, I have a granddaughter that's a freshman there this year.
Okay. Commissioner Fickus, I believe you have
an
interlocal agreement
with City of Grapevine. Rehabilitate, resurface Oak Grove Loop, and I move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Are there any appointments today? Okay, we have none, but we do have an audience participation. Mr. Tomlin Cossey.
I'm actually tall relative to the last speaker. I appreciate that. County Judge and Commissioners, I wanted to just alert you and ask you to be mindful when you make appointments or when you serve yourselves, especially on these TIF boards. As we research TRWD specifically, and we dive a little deeper into the kinds of transactions and even the numbers of their own employees and board members that serve and vote on the TIFs, there needs to be a greater level of scrutiny and active oversight, in part because even though it is not your government directly, this is a large government that impacts all of us. Water and the community around us is more important than even fire and law enforcement. I can assure you that we're finding more and more malfeasance there at TRWD, and they've been the beneficiary of the county's participation in a number of TIFs. In fact, if you add up how many tax dollars that moved into the tax base that could have been county dollars, and you add it up over a number of the last years, it turns out it amounts to a little bit more than what the district attorney was asking for in the building that she saw in the bond election recently. And the concept of TIFs is great, and the legislature intended it to do wonderful things for economic development. But I'm just going to give you one example of how lackadaisical they are at TRWD. And somebody needs to look and see how many family members that are connected to TRWD made money on this transaction just moments ago. The TRWD board voted to buy 4 parcels of land connected to Panther Island. The current Tarrant Appraisal District appraises those 4 properties at a total of $699,238, and the TRWD board voted to pay $3 million for those 4 properties, one of which TRWD had owned previously, flipped, and now bought again. This is a common practice there. You can see that the title company is related by blood. There are so many instances where TIF money has moved and been used for the wrong reasons. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about bonds when it gets to the general public comments, because I think that this particular entity and its governance practices that don't look anything like what happens when your staff walks up here and you vote and scrutinize almost every outlay right down to $1,000. But I think that the reason why some of the bond packages failed includes the fact that that government reflects on this government. And a voter like me that's fairly informed isn't the norm. So voters go into that voting booth and they look at those bonds, and they're, in some cases they are discerning when it's clear what the bond is for. But at TRWD, they passed a bond in 2018 that was specified for flood control. And I guarantee you that less than 15% of the dollars already sold in bonds and expended has been used for flood control.
Thank you, sir. Court members, you now have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
So, Your Honor, we have a briefing item at this time.
Yes, sir.
So, members of the court, if we can go to item C under the briefing. This is training as it relates to the prevention of harassment and discrimination. I'm going to ask Ms. Johnson to come forward and begin that discussion with the court.
Good afternoon. It's been a long time. Excited to have this conversation with you. Let me just make sure. I'm looking for my slides. Asking if they can put my slides up. I only have a few. Oh, they're up. I'm looking up here. Okay. So employees have been offered live. We're going to be having a conversation about harassment prevention and corporate compliance training that's already provided here at the county. So employees have been offered live instructor-led harassment prevention training since the early 2000s. Since about 2004, Larry Wilson has offered compliance or harassment prevention training through his staff development programs. Over 1,800 employees have been trained, and so through the years that training has been updated and somewhat reviewed by the CDA's office. In addition to that, in 2008, the Management Development Institute began offering an annual employment law symposium for managers and supervisors, and that highlighted the various federal laws that impact the workforce. A couple of things that are important to note. I'm sorry, a little bit of it is hard to read. That the training through staff development is available to all employees, and the training that we make available through the Management Development Institute and organizational development is really focused on managers and supervisors, but both provide an annual training calendar that's published at the beginning of the year. Also, you'll see emails that announcing training that come from both programs. It's also important to note that departments can request training, customized training for their departments. And that training is in the past, before the pandemic, was delivered live. Now, for the most part, that training is virtual, but live instruction, with a few classes still provided in person. Generally, all training is voluntary, and with a few exceptions. So the court may recall that several years ago, the court mandated harassment training for certain departments, and also certain departments do require some of their existing employees and some of their new hires to go through training. But we all know that over time, training and the way that training is delivered, the way learners engage, has changed. And so that has specifically or especially been true over the last 20 months with the pandemic. So with that being said, some training has transitioned from in-person to more of an online platform, and that's especially true with compliance training, simply because it is more flexible. You can have on-demand training. It's easily accessible to employees. It's scalable. But there are certainly some let me go back. Okay, it's going a little far. I'm not trying to play with it. I'm looking for slide number 2. I think somebody was helping me, and I appreciate it. So that there are absolutely, thank you. There are some advantages for compliance training, and we're all kind of familiar with those. Basically, it increases awareness for the employee. It creates some understanding of what the workplace rules are, and kind of sets the expectation of compliance. It also helps to reduce the risk and penalties that are associated with noncompliance. It doesn't guarantee that incidents won't happen, but if you are able to show that training has been provided to all employees, it's standard training, it's consistent, then a lot of times those penalties and that risk is reduced. It also helps to create a safe workplace and a healthier work environment. And overall, it just kind of protects the organization and its employees. We all know that training creates or helps to shape the organizational culture, and I think that that's true here as well. So with that being said, the plan all along with the county has been to incorporate or establish online training for all employees countywide with the adoption of a learning management system. We are now, or IT is now, in the final phase of implementation for a learning management system. So this, coupled with the painful experience of the pandemic, has kind of pushed us along in terms of identifying and curating online content for training. And basically, we created a pilot that began last year in 2020. And that pilot consisted of corporate compliance training for employees, and it also included professional development. So for the sake of the conversation today, we'll focus in on the compliance training. Basically, there were two compliance libraries that were created. One that consisted of 5 courses for employees. And you can see them there on the screen. The longest class was the harassment prevention training, which was 31 minutes. The shortest class was about 5 minutes. It was a compliance short. For supervisors, there were 10 required courses. Again, the longest one being harassment prevention for managers, which was 53 minutes. What we basically looked for when we were identifying content, we wanted it to be easy to navigate, easy to read and understand for the employee. We wanted the system to be easy to navigate. We wanted the content to be up to date. We wanted it to be accurate. In terms of reasonableness for time, we did not want departments to have to take, or employees to have to take a lot of time away from their departments. So we were very mindful about how easily individuals could go through the training and that it would not take up a very much time. I believe if you calculate the total minutes for the 5 classes for employees, it looks like maybe 1 hour and 35 minutes. For the 5 course library for employees, they were given 30 days to complete the training. I haven't not had any negative feedback about, well, I didn't have enough time or it was too difficult. That seemed like a very reasonable amount of time, 30 days. Because supervisors had to complete the 10 compliance courses, which went a little bit beyond harassment prevention. It covered baseline information about family medical leave, EEO and hiring practices, and so they got 90 days. A couple of other factors that we looked at when we were identifying content is that we wanted online content that provided prompts throughout the training, so individuals could take the class, review the information. If they needed to go back and listen to the information, they could. And there were certain areas within the training that if it presented a concept, then you might get 2 or 3 questions that basically tested your understanding and comprehension of that content.
Did it also test whether or not you were still watching?
Absolutely, because you had to actually navigate through that training.
And you had to get it answered pretty quickly within the time that it popped up?
Yes, you didn't get to walk away and come back 2 hours later and that training is still up. Absolutely. We also set a passing score of 80. So you had to at least get a score of 80 to be considered successful in your training. What we found when we went back and looked at the average passing score across both libraries was a score of 97. So employees really adapted pretty well to the concept. I had some departments that, especially during the pandemic, they were looking to provide online training and compliance training to their employees while they were either, we had stay-at-home orders or there was downtime because we were not having customers come into the office. So for a number of reasons, departments were actually eager in asking for the compliance training. That also drove the pilot. Some other factors for the content, we wanted the scenarios and the examples that were provided in training to be relatable and relevant to county service. And then, of course, the training needed to be scalable. whether we were going to be offering it to 200 employees or 4,500 employees. We are now in our second year of issuing licenses. I believe we've issued, the first year we issued 2,500 licenses and had over employees completed over 1,600 compliance classes. We wanted to make sure, again, that the training was scalable and cost-effective. So for employees to complete that 5-course library was $11.25 per employee. The supervisor library was a little bit higher. It was $19, I believe, and 75 cents. Very reasonable. We had a number of departments that participated in the pilot. Just to name a few, we had the Sheriff's Department, Tax Office, medical examiners had all of their managers and supervisors, directors complete the compliance training. We have had individuals from county clerk, juvenile services, resource connection, public health, domestic relations. So we've had a very broad spectrum of departments that we were able to get feedback from as far as the online training. It's important to note that probably for the last 5 years or so, we have included funding in our budgets in anticipation of the LMS to include for the specific purpose of online content. And so it looks like we're kind of moving a little bit closer in that direction. A couple of things that I wanted to mention to you in closing, and then I'll see if you have any questions for us. We would like the court to, first of all, consider a corporate compliance training program, basically, that would be available to employees and to supervisors. And we want to make that designation the distinction. We would like for the court to consider mandating this training and making it required for all county employees. It is our belief and recommendation that with our new LMS coming online, that we would like to have a core, standard, consistent training. We don't necessarily want to have 37 or however many departments, and they all have different harassment trainings, different unconscious bias trainings. It's not to say that they will not be able to have content over and beyond, but we would like to have a set library and compliance program. We do think that it'll be more easily reportable. The information will be more valid. And again, we would be meeting that standard of standardization, consistency, and that it's provided to all employees. One of the things that if I'm talking to managers and supervisors about harassment prevention, and we're talking about the EEOC, one of the things that will come up initially, if ever there's an incident, the employer is going to be asked, what kind of training have you provided to your employees? Again, you want that to be standardized, you want it to be consistent, and you want it to be provided to all employees. So with that, unless somebody else has some other information, I'm happy to answer any questions. Or I know our DA, one of the things that I also did before we created the pilot is that I visited with the DA's office because I knew that they already had some compliance training, especially harassment prevention, and I wanted to see what they offered. The model that was established for the pilot, we're kind of wanting to model that for the LMS for the first year, but certainly that does not mean that those are the only classes that would be considered. It's possible that those classes, we will be vetting those classes year after year, and some will fall off the list and some will be added as we move through the compliance program and move beyond our first year.
Excuse me. Are we agendized to take action on this today?
As part of a briefing agenda, historically, we have been taking some action as it relates to briefing. Commissioner, may I ask what type of action that you're seeking?
Well, apparently the ask is that we develop this training and that we mandate it for employees and supervisors.
I would suggest that what we do is, rather than take action on that, direct us to put that on the agenda for next week, because we have one question that we need to ask. And let's bring this up to the entire court. It's a question we asked to the DA's office. If the Commissioner's Court has the authority to mandate training to any other department except those departments that lie underneath the Commissioner's Court umbrella.
And Commissioner, let me say, I would like for us to consider, we're talking about here mostly, I think, the sexual harassment. Do you feel like, you've listed several things. I'm also interested in diversion and inclusion, diversity and inclusion. Would these 5 for the employees and 10 for the supervisors, would that also encompass, in addition to the sexual harassment, the diversity and inclusion?
Yes. And the harassment prevention it includes sexual harassment, but it's a much broader training. So it really covers all types of harassment. It covers full Title VII, age discrimination, all of that. Also, the diversity and inclusion aspects are going to be incorporated in the unconscious bias. And you notice that most have the two classes. There's a full class that for employees that's 22 minutes, and there's a 5-minute compliance short. And so one provides the core information about unconscious bias and how we interact and deal with the multiple generations in the workplace. But also the compliance short provides more of a practical application. Here's what it looks like. It's scenario based, so it again supplements the training. So you do have that covered in both the classes for both libraries.
The other question that I had was, how frequently is it recommended that we mandatorily require everybody to do that?
We would like to be able to offer this and deploy this training annually.
Okay. And I understand, and I would like to hear what maybe next week, but I would also tell you that I think we could make some general policies about, one, yes, it may be up to some individuals to decide whether they want to do it, but we can also, as a policy, say we will not defend anyone who doesn't. And we might also suggest that, defend, and require a time frame in which we could, which we would give them to do. Because every conference I've gone to that has anything on HR right now basically says the first question they're going to ask is, when's the last time? Now, the one thing that I would also think we ought to consider, I do know that there are a couple of departments who already have systems in place to do that. I know the DA's one. I believe the district clerk may be one. And so what we might say is if they're not utilizing the systems that HR has, that they still need to be HR approved on that, as opposed to just saying, you can go out and use whatever you want to and whenever you want to from that standpoint.
I agree with that.
So I have a question on your suggesting that if it's a requirement and that we will not defend someone who has not completed it, does that include elected officials?
Most definitely.
Okay. Well, I think that needs to be clearly delineated. Obviously, we can't make an elected official do something, but we certainly should not be spending taxpayer dollars to defend them when they had an opportunity to learn better and hopefully do better. Okay.
The only issue with that in my mind is that if that elected official or that employee who has not taken the training gets sued, the county is going to be sued as well.
But at least we had a procedure in place that should have gone, that where we required it, and it was by choice of the elected official not to do that. And I think the and you'll tell us this when you come back, but my guess is the elected official could exclude their employees and say their employees aren't subject to this, but the employee might decide on their own, if they didn't feel like they were going to be defended, that maybe it was to their benefit to go out and get this. And then the other thing we can always do is we could prepare and provide and be very transparent with a list at the end of any given year of those folks who have failed to get their credit.
All of that's good stuff. I just don't want I don't want us to ignore the fact that these persons can create liability for the county.
We require a elected official who refused to take the course to sign something that says, I refuse to take this, and this is the consequences. No defense.
I think that's reasonable.
I think what we're all saying is we want them to take it. So probably tell us just how far we can go in expressing our displeasure if they choose not to take it.
But we can also go ahead and, for new employees, as they go through new employee orientation, we can carve out an hour. They can go through the entire employee.
Now, the employees is an hour and a half, and the supervisors are about 3 hours, 10, 15 minutes. Yes,
So, just out of curiosity, hypothetically, we all have a big group of employees. Say an employee didn't get the opportunity to take the training for some reason or another, and they're caught up in something, and they weren't on the rotation to have this training based on how we work, and we can't just all manage to stick an hour and a half in training. It's departments you're running. Just be mindful of that. So Sarah didn't make her training; it was scheduled 4 months from now, and Sarah's caught up in something, and where does that leave me as the elected official? Well, Mayor Louise, you should have done it day one. Well, it doesn't work like that way in our office. So just be mindful of that time and how we're going to have to manage those people and when we schedule them out. It's not that I'm not going to do it. I just think if Sarah ends up in a situation, be mindful. I don't want y'all to come back and say, well, that's on you. No, it really isn't. We're trying to run an organization.
But I guess my comment to that would be is this is all a matter of they can go online and do this. Mm-hmm. And I would say when we're talking about an hour and 35 minutes, if you give them 2 or 3 months to do that, they ought to be able to get it done. And you ought to make sure they do.
2 to 3 months. That's what I'm saying. 2 to 3 months. People have customers walking up. We can't just have people. I'm just saying, Judge Whitley, when we're running organizations and we have customer service facing events, I'm just asking for you to be mindful of that, because if something does happen with a brand new employee I hire, I don't know anything about, and she is scheduled and we gave her that opportunity, that window, and she didn't meet it, I'm just asking to please be mindful of that situation.
I'm hopeful that brand new employees, it won't be a problem because they're going to be required to do it before they can come into work.
Delays onboarding, but that's
a couple of other things that I wanted to mention before we leave this. I wanted to make sure that I mentioned for the pilot, in order for employees to access the training, they had to actually read an acknowledgement statement that referenced whether they were exempt or non-exempt, and when they could access online training, and then when they cannot. So it clearly states that if you are an hourly employee, that training is a compensable activity, and that you will complete your training during your regular work hours. Exempt employees are of course, have 24-hour access to their training, and they can do it from any device. Their phones, their laptops, whatever. And the last thing, when we talk about the trainings that have been available to employees even before this, although we hope to have a set of core compliance courses like these that are provided online. As a supplement, if departments want additional training, they will still be able to request live training through staff development or attend the employment law symposiums.
So, Jeanette, I do have one question. I'm not sure who mentioned it, but I guess between the DA's office, the district clerk's office, and then HR, those are the 3 programs, or are there more than that? I'm having a hard time understanding that.
I'm not aware. I'm aware that the DA has classes, and to be honest, I vetted and reviewed some of those classes before selecting this particular content. And I don't want to speak for the DA, but some of the training that was provided for the harassment, it's a little bit more difficult, I think, maybe. And I was looking at training for all employees. So I was looking at readability. I wanted people to be able to just be intuitive about navigating it. So it was a little bit more complex. I can absolutely see the attorneys in the DA's office not having any kind of problem navigating that training. But, for the average Joe, I'm not sure if we would have that same, be able to go through that training with the same level of ease. So what I believe we should do, I think it's okay to have that separate training. In fact, our second year of this, maybe the supervisors we'll make that harassment training that's already available to the CDA's staff. Maybe that will be the training that we include in the library for supervisors. This is just kind of to create a baseline and get employees accustomed to online training. People navigate training all the time online now, but we want to make sure that we're thinking about all of the employees. I don't think that we should have 3 or multiple options for training. I think that is probably the exception, and that we work together to have both of those libraries available, specifically the DA's office and then everybody else.
Well, and I might be a little bit more flexible. We'll just see how many that may be out there. But one of the things I do think we need to do is, when you've got a multiple system, you've already said that in order for the supervisors, they've got to score at least blank. And so, let's make sure that we know exactly what it takes to pass any system that we have out there from that perspective. And that would be a part of our approval of of any existing programs that may be in the county right now.
Well, and I would add, and I certainly trust your expertise and others in HR who have been working on this issue, but one of my main concerns is just making sure whatever that we put out, that it's not, yes, I understand that we want to make sure that we're compliant with the law, but we need to do more than just, performative action. As a person of color in this organization, I can tell you that the training is sorely needed. I've talked very openly about it on numerous occasions. Never went into as great a detail as I could have, but I think it's really important that if we're trying to create an organization that is equity focused, that is actually inclusive of its diversity, then we really need to come up with the best solutions and products that we can, so that it more positively impacts the day-to-day experience of not just our employees, but also our customers. So, thank you.
Absolutely. And keep in mind that, I know that Larry has diversity training, but I know through MDI we did a full series of trainings that spoke to equity, diversity, and inclusion. And it included town halls. We had live virtual trainings where we talked far beyond unconscious bias. We talked about allyship. And so we're trying to make sure that our training is well-rounded This just gives us a baseline because everybody won't be able to attend those live sessions. So, this online platform will help us just kind of create that baseline for employees, shape the organization, and then, of course, we're going to continue to have the programming that's offered through MDI and staff development, for sure.
And I do see those emails that come through allowing folks to sign up. Will you resend some of that stuff? I'd like to compare that with even what the DA has sent, I guess, with EverFi and anything else that's out there, just to kind of get a sense of what is being presented to our employees. And obviously, I know there will be more work to be done after we take formal action, but I'd really like to get a better sense of what all's out there.
Okay. I can absolutely submit to you what we've offered this year.
Okay.
Basically, I know I'm working through the planning for 2022 now, so the calendar doesn't exist, but we're absolutely going to continue to focus in all of those areas, EDI all the way.
Thank you.
I'm just standing to support. I appreciate it. Support all of you.
I have two audience participations. One from Bishop Mark Kirkland. Kirkland, please come forward. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Afternoon, I guess.
Yes, sir. To the Honorable Judge, to my precinct commissioner especially, and all the rest of you. I have some major concerns that is as it relates to the upcoming trial of Mr. Aaron Dean. Part of my concerns fall under the jurisdiction of this court as well as with City Hall. I attended 2 trials of police officers in our city. To my knowledge, the last 2 was Officer Courtney Johnson as well as Officer John Roman. I attended those trials, and my concern is with the POA, the presence of police officers. I've also been watching the trials of Mr. Aubrey in Georgia, and the big fuss about people being allowed in the courtroom. My concerns are not in contradictory of that, or maybe perhaps so. But during those trials that I mentioned before, the police basically acted like gangs, if you please. I know you don't control each judge's courtroom, but in the quarters of those courtrooms, the hallways, public places, that it's really unruly and they're very intimidating, and they show up, and it's not only intimidating, I think, to the participants in the actual trials, but it is also intimidating to the observers of those processes. And it is, again, it is your responsibility to make certain that we as a community, as a village, feel safe whenever we want to come in, and not that we have to feel threatened by what goes on in the places that you supervise. I don't know exactly when the rescheduling trial of Mr. Dean will take place, but another concern that we have is, and when we all full of Christmas cheer and Christmas turkey, that these things will take place and the county just not get the kind of attention that it needs. And the last area that I'm really concerned about, and maybe I haven't done my homework adequately, but there is only one charge that I've been able to see that's been filed against Mr. Dean. And if that one single charge is murder, I think we have a better chance of not boiling spaghetti noodles and getting them to stick against the wall than to get him convicted of murder alone. So our concern is to make sure that the DA's office makes certain that there are other charges that we have a possibility to deal with other than just murder, because I truly believe that if that's the only charge, that he's going to walk. And my concern is, what will our city look like? Thank you. I want this group of people, this entity, as well as the city of Fort Worth, to work really hard to make sure that our village, our city is prepared for a non-guilty verdict. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And just I'll say this because you're not a regular. We can't respond to you today.
I understand.
Okay. Just wanted to be sure.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Tom LaCosse.
Judge Whitley, commissioners, taxpayers and citizens that are watching online and texting me in real time, I really appreciated that the bishop spoke right before me. What I heard, and I might be wrong, is he's asking to be sure that the district attorney and the system be tough but fair. From what I remember, the first day that Sharon Wilson was elected, she was reputed to be tough and fair, and I'm going to ask her to be that again. She has a large department and plenty of sharp, competent, professional prosecutors. As she works on the Aaron Dean trial and her staff does their best to do what's right for all of us, I'm going to encourage her to do the same thing with her public integrity unit. I want to give you a couple of examples. I've only been threatened over the phone one time so far. I was also threatened on social media by the son of one of the TRWD employees. He took it down faster than we could screen capture it. To date, we've identified about $15 million in labor burden that has been wasted on employees that don't even show up for work over there. But I want to concentrate on one specific thing that I don't think would be tolerated here at Tarrant County by the administrator or by the Commissioner's Court. It is troubling on a couple of levels. Because the folks over at TRWD, when they resign or they retire, their letters always mention the company. They literally say, this is the best company I've ever worked for. The concept that it's a public entity, that they're public servants, that it's a public building, that we're the public, that they're the public servant that serve us is completely gone there. I promise you. Now, one specific thing that happened recently is I requested the Ring doorbell video of the bond salesman who got on the phone immediately after they voted without a public hearing, without a referendum, to sell $150 million or more in bonds. I got the video eventually, but of course the audio was gone. I've requested things in the past where, of course, it was deleted or not available. But the thing that was troubling about this, amongst the $300,000 they spent on lawyer letters with 5 different law firms blocking my and my group's access to open public records, is that they used a tag or a tracer so that if I share it with Mr. Manius, or I share it with the media, or I share it with the district attorney's office, they track who I shared that open public record with. Think about that. They have a particular individual that they hired. His specialty is corporate spying. His name is Sean Datema. He just got promoted, but his specialty is to do things that other governments don't do. So if I have sent evidence or data to the district attorney's office, they know it. That's how bad the situation is there.
That's all we have at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, then we will recess our open meeting to proceed to close to discuss items consent under section 551.071, 072, 074, 076, and 087, and 0725 of the Texas Government Code. Having returned from our closed session, there being no business to conduct at this time, we stand adjourned.